All praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the 144,000 and the rest of the elect. Hey, Shalom. This is the brother Yakana from the GMS Houston camp, and this is just a quick lesson. I was listening to the apostle Ariam Lab, and he hit a precept, Luke 21 and 24, and I'll go ahead and read it. And it says, this is Yahushua speaking, and it says, "And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations, and Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles be fulfilled." So Jerusalem will be trodden down of the Gentiles, the heathen, the actual heathen nations. The Israelites will be scattered. And the part that I'm focusing on, which I'll come back to this, is led away captive. But just to show, here, and I might also get this in another version. Let me see. Let me see here. Dang, I already forgot. This is dang memory. Oh, 2 Thessalonians. I hate these bodies so much. I'm just gonna see what it says in some different versions, but okay, none of these really. That's all right. I'll just stick with the KJV. This is 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 1. It says, "Now we beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Yahushua Hamashiach, and by our gathering together unto him." So we're coming together in Yahushua, and we're being gathered together by the word. The prophets being out here, prophesying, preaching, starting with the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. This is a part of prophecy. We're all being gathered together by the word, the hopeful elect. We are being gathered together by this word that's going out, be it the internet. So now I beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord, which is what we're prophesying about. We're prophesying about Yahushua returning, his return. All the signs are here. Wars, rumors of wars, earthquakes, Jacob's trouble, the MOTB, Revelation 13:16, World War III. All these things are in place and playing out as we speak. So we're being gathered together, and we're waiting patiently for our Lord Yahushua to gather us together in his chariot. But we're being gathered together now before this day of destruction comes, because the day of destruction, the second death, the ICBMs, that great fire that's coming, is the same day that Yahushua, meaning his name, meaning he saves, he delivers, he is going to come and save his people, his elect, and his people are the Israelites. So this is again 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 and verse 1. "Now I beseech you, brethren, by the coming of our Lord Yahushua Hamashiach, and by our gathering together unto him, that ye be not soon shaken in mind, or be troubled, So that ye be not soon shaken in mind, or be troubled, neither by spirit, nor by word, nor by letter, as from us, as that day of Hamashiach is at hand." So don't be troubled in your mind. Just do your best to accept the will of Yahweh Shem Yahushua. Know all these things, troubles got to happen. All these things got to happen, but it doesn't change the fact that Yahushua is coming. So verse 3, "Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first." Hey, how you doing? So that falling away says, "Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come a falling away first." So Yahushua is not going to return until there's a falling away, meaning we fell away from our heritage. So let me see what that word for falling. G646 apostasia says a falling away, defection, forsake, meaning in Jerusalem, everything is going to be forsaken. And it says, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. And both of these things are happening. We fell away 70 AD. Let me see here. Shoot, I never even looked that up before. It says, I asked, when was Jerusalem last scattered? Jerusalem was last scattered fundamentally. Oh, I'm sorry. Jerusalem was last fundamentally scattered, and it's not Jewish. It's Jews. It's not pertaining to. These were people from the tribe of uh, Benjamin, Levi, and Judah. You know, the kingdom was called the kingdom of Judah, but they weren't. Anyway, it's annoying to explain every time, but these were people from their own tribes, and heathens collectively called them Judah. It's more of a derogatory term, you could say, but it's still what it is. But the kingdom at this point was split. At this time, the kingdom had already been split. The northern kingdom had already gone off into captivity, into the Assyrian captivity. After their captivity was over, they left and came to the Americas. It says that in 2nd Ezra 13. So again, Jerusalem was last fundamentally scattered, and its population exiled by the Roman Empire in 70 CE. During the First Jewish-Roman War, Roman forces under Titus destroyed the Second Temple and razed the city, leading to a massive dispersion of the Judite population. How about that? A further and final expulsion occurs after the Bar Kokhba revolt in 135 CE, which I'll look more into that, but that was a major scattering was 70 CE because the temple was destroyed. Matter of fact, that's what the disciples were asking Yahushua about. So I'll jump back over here, and Salaki, if this lesson is, all over the place, Lord willing, it's edifying. So this is Matthew 24. Matthew 24 and verse 1, and Yahushua went out, and at the top right here it says, signs of Yahushua's return. And Yahushua went out and departed from the temple, and his disciples came to him for to show him the buildings of the temple. And Yahushua said unto them, see ye not all these things? Verily I say unto you, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, tell us when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming and of the end of the world? So when is the temple going to be destroyed? He told them. He didn't say, oh, it's going to be 70 CE, but he gave them the prophecy of what it's going to be like, how to tell. So he goes on to give the prophecies, but this happened. This happened, later down the line. About if that was 30 AD, it happened around 70. It was around 40 years later. So, and Yahushua gives all the signs of when this place is going to be destroyed, whatnot, and when you're going to be scattered, and when he's going to return. And Yahushua didn't return at that time. He was speaking of a later time when he's going to return. So I'm not going to go all into it because that's not really the point of the lesson. But I was going back to, I believe, so Luke 21:24, we fell away, or fallen away. Matter of fact, that's what I wanted. Jeremiah 17. believe it's 9. Oh, I'm sorry, it's verse 4. I get those mixed up. This is Jeremiah chapter 17 and verse 4. And thou, even thyself, shalt discontinue from thine heritage that I gave thee, and I will cause thee to serve thine enemies in the land which thou knowest not, for ye have kindled a fire in mine anger, which shall burn forever. So discontinue. H8058, shamat, meaning to fling down, to incipently, to jostle, to let alone, desist, discontinue, release. Let's see, desist. Desist is a formal verb meaning to cease, stop, or to abstain from an action, or legal, often used in legal context. So guess what? We cut off from the law. We stopped following the law because we were scattered into all the different nations, following their gods, their customs. We lost our own heritage, our own customs, and we took on the other nations. We became like heathens. Even though bloodline, we're Israelites, but because we were scattered amongst the different nations, we became like the different heathen. So this is Deuteronomy 28:48, and that was after 70 AD. What was left of Jerusalem scattered, mostly went into the interior, the western parts of Africa, but we're scattered all around the world. Not just in that part of Africa, but all around the world we have been scattered. You know, when you look at the Maccabees, the account of the Maccabees, them being scattered, also the four kingdoms in Daniel 7, that was us being scattered. We went through the Babylonians, that captivity, you know, then scattered amongst there. Then the Persians and the Medes took over. We are scattered in there. The Greeks took over. We were scattered even further, even lost our heritage, scattered throughout, you know, Greece and Europe, different parts, all that. Scattered, lost our heritage. Some, you know, Israelites were able to keep the customs and keep speaking the language. Others weren't able to keep the customs. You know, it was all scattered ultimately to, you know, after the Romans, you know, scattered even further, lost our heritage even further, all the way to completely losing our heritage. So where you see today, where we're completely, you know, waking up to the fact that we're Israelites. We had no idea what that we were Israelites in this time when you're waking up. So this is Deuteronomy 28 and verse 48. And you know what? I'll start up a little bit. I'll start up at you know, Salaki, I thought that was another verse, but I'll just read the 48. It says, therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, shall send against thee, in hunger and in thirst and in nakedness and in want of all things, and he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. So this happened. You can look up yoke of iron. I'll look that up. Oops. I just really wanted to highlight the word. That's all right. Yoke of iron. You look that up. You're going to see a Jake with a yoke of iron around his neck, you know, representing slavery. This is what they do to slaves: put yokes of iron on them, put shackles on them, put chains on them. It says, until he have destroyed thee. So we had to serve our enemies wherever we've been scattered to, and primarily to the Americas, to you know, North America, South America, to the Caribbean, the different islands, and really all over the world. So, and the Yahweh, verse 49, and Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai shall bring a nation against thee from far, from the end of the earth, as swift as the eagle flieth, a nation whose tongue thou shalt not understand. So when they took us on these slave ships, these were some of the fastest ships around. And also their symbol, you know, for Esau, Edom, the Roman Empire, the Greek Empire, and so on. Today is the eagle. So, you know, it's twofold. It's symbolism and showing you their speed, their swiftness. You know, and also when you look at the eagle, it's a very proud looking bird. You know, there's plenty of signs in the scriptures identifying who is who. You just have to have, you know, a spiritual eye to see it. Verse 50, a nation of fierce countenance, which shall not regard the person of the old, nor show favor to the young. So does it not sound like Esau, Edom? You don't show favor to the old nor the young. That of you Jakes, of you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. Shoot. I'm going to jump down, I think, verse 64. And Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai shall scatter thee among all people from the one end of the earth even unto the other. And there thou shalt serve other gods which neither thou nor thy fathers have known, even wood and stone. So where we've been scattered to, we won't be worshiping the one true power, Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai, the way he intended us to. We will be serving our enemies' gods. Because when you look at Christianity, this is set up for them. This is set up for the Edomites to rule. Why is that? Because he covered up the images. He covered up the images, made them into to look like themselves. You know, he took out parts for the slave Bible. You know, he made sure whenever you thought of anything in the Bible, you thought of him instead of you, me, and the people. And then he taught you wrong. He taught you salvation is for everybody. You know, he taught you if you didn't believe that, you're going to burn in hell forever. And then forced you into it. Burned you, beat you, whipped you. All manner of madness. Buck broke you. But continuing on, verse 68. And Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. So Egypt, meaning this is spiritual Egypt. You know, this isn't speaking about the physical Egypt. This is speaking of a spiritual Egypt. Because this is, this land here, Babylon the Great, is Salakia. Give me a second here. Salakia. It's a little better. Very, very stuffy. So this land here is Babylon the Great, America. It's code. It's spiritual code. And it also refers to it as Sodom, spiritual Egypt. You know, the fourth part of the world. This place is referred to in the scriptures. Arsareth. You know, but it's always written in code. It doesn't explicitly say they shall go into America and it's going to represent Egypt and it's going to represent all the bad places where the Israelites have gone into captivity. But figuratively, it's going to be called, no. It's all spiritual. It's so people can't get it. It's so the uninitiated can't get it. But again, and Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. This is how we came to the Americas, in ships. The transatlantic slave trade. They were shipping, Israelites. When you look at the West African kingdoms that were there, like Ouida, different things like that, those were Israelites over there. Ouida is the French way of saying Judah. And they try to tell you, oh, it doesn't mean that. That's all nonsense lies. You know, they call it Nigeria and all this kind of stuff. But before that, it was called, which I believe that was Ouida. And forgive me, but the point being is when they went over there to Africa, they colonized that. They changed the borders. They changed the name of things to make it harder for you to find and identify things. But at one point, there was a kingdom of Ouida. It means Judah. And they sent those slaves from West Africa over here to the Americas. And they sent the natives that were here in the Americas and in the islands over, again, across the world too. So this is just quick. I asked Google a bunch of questions. So I asked, where were African slaves sent to? Now, understand, I'm just putting this in here. Not every African or person from Africa, because Africa is just it's an Edomite Roman name label that's been given to you, a byword. That's another one. Now, in the curses, you shall be known as a proverb, a byword, You know, you're not going to be known as your own name. That's also a part of discontinuing from your heritage. So you're not being called by, your ancestral names. So enslaved Africans were primarily transported to the Americas, North America, South America, and the Caribbean. So let's look. That's a little map. I guess that's where they got Jake from. It says, during the Atlantic slave trade between the 16th and 19th centuries, the vast majority were taken from West and Central Africa to work on plantations with major destinations including Brazil, Caribbean sugar islands, and the United States. Primary destinations of enslaved Africans. Brazil received the highest number of enslaved Africans, particularly for sugar plantations, which that's extremely harsh. If you just know about the sugarland plantation out here in Babylon the Great, how Jake was just dying out there, and they just bury him, unmarked grave, a mass grave. So continuing, the Caribbean islands such as Jamaica, Saint Domingue, Saint, I'm sorry, Haiti. I don't know how Domingue, and Barbados were major destinations. So Jamaica, Haiti, and Barbados, which all these are on the 12 tribes sign. Spanish America, regions including modern day Colombia, Cuba, and Mexico. North America, the British colonies, later the USA, that was that little horn in Daniel 7, received a smaller percentage with major ports in Virginia, Maryland, South Carolina, and Louisiana. But they don't tell you all the ports, they'll just tell you the major ones. So they don't tell you about Wall Street in here. It says primarily regions of captivity in Africa, West Central Africa, modern day Angola, DRC, Congo, and Gabon. West Africa, modern day Nigeria, Ghana, Benin. Okay. So method of captivity, and also it says here, what were they sent? They were sent on ships. What do you see here? I mean, they had to be. If you can't figure it out, oh, there ain't no slave ships. They were sent on ships. So the Middle Passage, the key aspects of the slave trade, the Middle Passage, the brutal sea voyage across the Atlantic Ocean, and this is all put in a real. It's nicely put. Like they don't put any of the horrors in this. I mean, plus it's just an overview. So methods of captivity. Many were captured in raids or sold by local African leaders and traders. And Edomites will use this point. Well, black people sold other black people. And then leave it at that. If any man be found in your hand, you know, he that stealeth a man. But anyway, hey, all of you are complicit. Ain't nobody getting away. You know, whether or not those were actual Israelites or actual Hamites over there, and it's nobody's nobody's getting away. And how do you know that them Israelites that sold us when they were reborn, when they came back on the earth after their death, after those actions, how do you know they weren't born into slavery? But anyway, that's just speaking. There's other trade routes. In addition to the transatlantic slave trade, millions were also taken through the trans-Saharan and Indian Ocean slave trades to North Africa, the Middle East, and the Indian Ocean islands. So all over it's saying. So the next tab I'm getting to, I asked it, did African slaves go to India? It says yes, African slaves were brought to India in significant numbers, primarily from the 14th to the 17th centuries. So let's see what that was, because I always get it confused how they do the centuries. I mean, but that's how Esau Edom shit is. Like, it's all just confusing. I want to say that's the 1500s. So the 14th to the 17th centuries in Europe primarily recognized as a Renaissance, right? The rebirth. That was the rebirth of what? The rebirth of the Roman Empire. You know, this is the beast that had a deadly wound and it was healed. You know, the ones that came out of the bottomless pit out of Europe. So marked a transformative rebirth, bridging the Middle Ages and modernity. Starting in Italy, this era featured a revival. And really, I just wanted a time frame. I don't even. So okay, say the 1300s to about the 17. That's about the 1800s. So it wasn't that long ago, you know. 1800 is only 200 years ago. You know, that's not that. And I'll just keep that open. It says, yes, African slaves were brought to India in significant numbers, primarily from the 14th to the 17th centuries, though trafficking began as early as the 6th century. So it's been going on for a long time. You know, and these Edomites and whatnot, they learned a lot from the other slave traders, from the trans-Saharan slave trade and things like these. They learned how to do it better because these people were already doing it. They already had their hand in it. It says, though trafficking began as early as the 6th century, known as Habshish or Sidis, they were brought, or cities, Habshis or cities. They were brought via Arab traders across the Indian Ocean. Many rose to high positions as soldiers, generals, and rulers, most notably Malik Ambar. So that's fine. I had him pulled up in the next tab, but I'm not really going to go into him or anything. This is key aspects of the African enslavement in India. Most slaves were from East Africa, specifically Ethiopia, Abyssinia, and Swahili coast, and which what we tell you is Israelites have been scattered amongst all these different people. The Israelites are scattered amongst the Ethiopians. You know, you have Ethiopian Jews, things like that, like roles. Unlike the plantation slavery of the Americas, African slaves in India were primarily used for military service, palace guarding, and domestic work. Due to their military expertise, many achieved high status and became powerful political brokers, particularly in the Deccan sultanates, which aided the Israelites were excellent warriors as well, our people. And you see that today. Matter of fact, forgive me, I type like an old man right now. It says, and I'm saying black again because we have been scattered. Black is the current byword our people go by. It was black, African American, Negro, Negroid, whatever, Afro American. Your name has changed so many times that you know you're Israelites. That's it. This is like that. It says black personnel are highly represented in the U.S. military enlisted ranks, roughly 20% in the Army, but may remain underrepresented in the senior leadership. While trailblazers like General Lloyd Austin, the first black Secretary of Defense, have reached the highest levels, black officers represent only 5.6% of generals and admirals, a figure that drops in top tier command and positions. Now, remember, this is an Esau Edom's, you know, uh, this is an Esau Edom's rulership. You know, other kingdoms, they'll have us in higher positions. You know, in the kingdom of in Babylon, you know, Daniel, he was a very high ranking official. You know, and so were was it Azariah, Mishael, and oh man, let me see here. I know his Babylonian name, Abednego. It said Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego name. Anyway, I'll have to go back over them. Um, but those were high-ranking officials. Nehemiah, he was a high-ranking. He was the king's cupbearer. That's a very high rank. You know, I mean that's I mean that's examples that come to mind right now, and there's plenty more examples. But just for right now, that's Israelites were high ranking. It ain't have to be all of them, but a lot of us were high ranking. The same today. But then, like I said, this is Esau's kingdom. He has a disdain for Jake. So even if it's a very small amount of you going to raise to the ranks, playing Esau's game, and then those that are qualified and whatnot under Esau are not going to be in the positions that they should be in because of Esau's hatred towards us, these curses. We're not going to get the recognition to rank anything like we truly deserve. So, you're not going to get, like I did the lesson last week, you're not going to get reparations from Esau Edom. You're not going to get something nice from the wicked. Where was I? I think I was looking at back to the Indian slave trade, however it's called. It says roles, unlike the plantation slavery of the Americas, African slaves in India were primarily used for military service, palace guarding, and domestic work. So they had more variety, whereas our people were just subjugated to that. It's a rise to power. And anyway, this ain't about that. This is just showing that we've been scattered into different places. It says, were African slaves sent to China? It says, yes, African slaves were sent to China primarily between the 8th and 14th centuries via the Arab trade networks, with peak during the Tang and Song dynasties. Oh, the Tang and Song dynasties. Those were some of the, I believe those were like the highest, the kingdoms of China. Oh, look at that. Oh, man. It says the Tang 618 to 907 and Song the 960 to 1279. So going roughly into the Middle Ages, just about our dynasties are considered China's golden age. So your golden age was when you were getting Israelite slaves. So anyway, the Tang, and the same thing with Babylon the Great. Babylon the Great, America. Let me see here. And Salaki, this lesson, this is just in the spirit. Oops. The term Golden Age of America often refers to the post-World War II economic, the 50s and the 60s, or historically the late 19th century Gilded Age, characterized by rapid industrial growth. So here, the Gilded Age, known for immense industrial growth, but also severe wealth disparity and corruption. So those were the two when Jake was both in subjection. So Jake just got out of slavery pretty much, and then subject to Jim Crow. This is when you were being oppressed both of these times. That was 1950s and 60s, civil rights movements, whatnot. So pretty much just getting at when America was at its golden age was when Jake was in subjection, and we're still in subjection. And all these kingdoms, when they had their golden ages, we were in subjection to them. So, where was I? The Tang and Song dynasties, known as Kunlun Nu, dark-skinned slaves. These individuals were often brought from East Africa, Madagascar, or the Comoros Islands to work as domestic servants, or in some cases as exotic, high-status, or heavy labor workers for the wealthy elite in southern port cities like Canton. So, source of the trade, most slaves came through Arab middlemen operating in the Indian Ocean, with some directly taken from coastal African areas. The point being, Israelites were scattered amongst these nations in Africa and whatnot. This is where they took them from and took them to different places. It don't have to be specifically the transatlantic slave trade, but the trans-Saharan slave trade, which is what this is going into. And that played a role, a major role too. And that was going on longer than the transatlantic slave trade. So I have here also were slaves sent to Japan, because I'm going down a list of all the different nations that had us in the captivity. Which also we've been scattered, led into all nations captives. So yes, enslaved people were sent to, traded within, and brought from Japan. Yes, enslaved people were sent to, traded within, and brought from Japan during several periods in history. So they also took slaves from Japan. I believe those they call them the Jomon people, but I'm not sure. I can't say that. But that's one of the people that was the natives that were already there in Japan before the Japanese had arrived. So, and I will also look. I'm gonna look at. Oh, okay, so that's way before. Oh, USA Today fact checked it. Oh, okay. But anyway, I wasn't getting at that there were foreign people. Whatever this is saying, I was getting at that was where people were already dwelling. You know. Anyway, when you look at the Jomon people, there are dark skinned people there in Africa, and they're considered like a lesser class of people there. They don't consider them to be Japanese or anything like that, or the Japanese don't. But anyway, Salaki, that was just, that ain't going nowhere. So, what do I say? Yes, enslaved people were sent to, traded within, and brought from Japan during several periods in history. The most significant instances include the 16th century Portuguese slave trade of Japanese people, the import of Korean/African slaves during feudal wars, and the mass forced labor of Asians during World War II. So the 16th century Portuguese trade is what I'm focusing on here. Following 1543, Portuguese trader purchased Japanese people, mostly women, as slaves and sold them across Asia and in Portugal. So, I mean, how do you know that those? I mean, how do you know those weren't Israelites? But you don't know. Israel is scattered amongst all people, but just say those are just Japanese, Ammonites, whatever. That's okay. As slaves and sold them across Asia and Portugal. Toyotomi Hideyoshi banned this trade in the 1590s, citing the unbearable enslavement of Japanese citizens. So they saw how them Portuguese were treating, how they had to ride in them ships and all that, and they said, "No, we're not doing that." But with your own people, they had enough sense in that. I give them, man. Sengoku and Imjin Wars during the late 16th century Japanese invasion of Korea, thousands of Korean prisoners of war were brought to Japan as slaves. Okay. During African slaves during the non-bond trade period, 1543 to 1614, Portuguese traders brought African slaves to Japan. Notably, an African man named Yasuke became a retainer to warlord Oda Nobunaga, and that was like one of the. This is like one of the most famous Japanese. Uh, I wouldn't call him a warlord, but something like that, a retainer. So this this so-called African man named Yasuke, they gave him a Japanese name. I remember I did a lesson on this too. So, They traded him over there. Came as a slave. He became what is it called? Became a ran. Oh, it did say warlord. My bad. He became retainer, basically his armor bearer to the warlord Oda Nobunaga. So that's pretty interesting. Going into Jake has been, popular in the ranks and high ranking positions. Not always, but Jake is usually there. And that's pretty much it for that. I'm gonna close out pretty soon. Native Americans traded as slaves. Native Americans were enslaved by European colonists for over 400 years, roughly the 1490s. That's when Columbus came over here, and so on. In the 1900s, with an estimated 2.5 to 5 million indigenous people enslaved across the Americas. Often ignored in history, this other slavery was driven by colonists needing labor, and it peaked, and he called us lazy. And it peaked before the widespread reliance on African slaves. And why is that? Because you enslaving them and they familiar with the terrain, they just fucking dip on you. So they sent them off to other places. It says origins: Columbus initiated the trade in 1493, sending indigenous people from the Caribbean to Spain. The scope: enslavement occurred across the continent from New England, selling of Pequot slaves, and Carolinas using Cherokee and Yamasee to raid tribes. Utah, Mormon settlers buying native children. In California, and remember the Mormons, they said that you got dark skin, that's a curse. That's the dark skin is a curse on you. And they know, the Mormons, they know that you Native Americans are the Israelites. Let me see here. I get that. And Salaki, this is going on. I hope I spelled that right. Yeah, here it is. History and beliefs. All right, I'll read this. This is the Lamanites refers to a group in the Book of Mormon described as the descendants of Laman. Which I don't know what this is. They are characterized by a history of conflict, alternating periods of righteousness and wickedness, and a promised theological future to blossom as the rose, whatever. This is all a nigga that was just bugged out. But here, they taking stuff from the scriptures. It says the Lamanites originated from a familial split shortly after arriving in the Americas from Jerusalem, eventually becoming a large population in conflict. So it tells you here that it says they arrived in the Americas from Jerusalem. So it doesn't say when. Matter of fact, let me do this here. Second Ezra chapter 13 and verse 40, those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hoshea the king, whom Shalmaneser the king of Assyria led away captive, and he carried them away over the waters, so they came into another land. But they took this counsel among themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go into a further country where never no mankind dwelt. That's the Americas. That they might there, and that's also when Columbus, how he got to where he was getting, he was using Second Esdras. He was using the Apocrypha to identify the people because he knew this scripture. But they took counsel among themselves that they would leave the multitude of the heathen and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt, that they might there keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land. And they entered into it because we're still not able to keep them. It don't matter if we go where we go, as long as we're in these bodies, we're not going to be able to keep the laws, statutes, and commandments of Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai. We need these put in our inward parts. So, and they entered into Euphrates by the narrow places of the river, for the Most High then showed signs for them and held still the flood till they were passed over. For through that country there was a great way to go, namely of a year and a half, and the same region is called Arsareth. So Arsareth being another land. Aratazah, was it? Achar Aratazah, I believe. Let me see here. Right, that's where it says America. This word is a corruption of Achar and Aratazah. So another land. So this is, Esau, Edom, telling the truth and a lie at the same time. It says history and belief, they are depicted as a society that frequently disregarded the religious traditions of their ancestors, leading to a dark and loathsome curse, according to the narrative. Let me see here. Because it don't fucking say it. In the Book of Mormon, the Lamanite dark skin curse is described as a mark of dark skin placed upon the Lamanites following their rebellion. So anyway, long way to get, but basically these Mormons and whatnot, all the people know that you're the Israelites. All the people know that the Israelites are supposed to have dark skin, but they saying, "Oh, this is a curse. This is a curse that you have dark skin," because you says that the dark skin was a mark or a sign of spiritual curse, which is not. This dark skin, this melanin protects you from the sun. The real people that have a curse is Esau, Edom, the so-called white man. You mean to tell me it's not a curse that if you go out in the sun, your skin turns red and blisters, becomes all leathery? Anyway, I'm gonna close out here. I've gone through, pretty much hit everything. This is let me see here. There's a few of them. Matter of fact, this is Ezekiel chapter 36 and verse 21. But I had pity for mine holy name, which the house of Israel had profaned among the heathen whither they went. So everywhere we went, we were supposed to keep, it don't matter where we were scattered to, whatever, we were really supposed to keep the laws. We're supposed to represent Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai wherever we went. But being that we scattered, fell away, all this stuff, worship other gods, we're profaning that Most High's name by calling on, other gods, by doing things that he does not like. But in these days, the name has been known again by his men, starting with the Rabbi Abba Bivens. On down, the name has been returned to us. The name's Yahweh and Yahushai. Therefore say unto the house of Israel, thus saith the Lord Yahweh, I do not this for your sakes, O house of Israel, but for my holy name's sake, which ye have profaned among the heathen, whither ye went. So this is for Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai, his great and holy name, that he's doing this. So his name can be known. And he's doing this through all the nations and through us. He brought us down low, and he's going to make his name known again. And I will sanctify my great name, which was profaned among the heathen, which ye have profaned in the midst of them. And the heathen shall know that I am Yahweh, saith Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai, when I shall be sanctified in you before their eyes. And this is happening now in these days. Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai is being sanctified. The name is made holy. That name, no other name. There is no other power that can save. There is no other name under heaven. Matter of fact, I know I keep saying, This is Acts chapter 4 and verse 12. Neither is there salvation in any other, for there is none other name under heaven given among men whereby we must be saved. So that name has to be a holy, special. And Christians have been around for a long time, and they have not told you the name because it is dreadful to the heathen. So again, Ezekiel 36 and 23, I will be sanctified. I will sanctify my great name, which was profaned among the heathen, which ye have profaned in the midst of them. And the heathen shall know that I am Yahweh, Ba'ashem Yahushai, saith the Lord Yahweh, when I shall be sanctified in you before their eyes. And that's in these days, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai is being sanctified amongst his people. We're calling on the name Yahweh and Yahushai. We're putting those names above any name. You know, Yahweh meaning he to be, he exists. Yahushua meaning he saves, he delivers. And we honor those names. For I will take you from among the heathen and will gather you out of all countries and will bring you into your own land. So this is happening. The word is going out and we're being gathered together by the word, and we're going to be gathered together into the chariots. 441. Call Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai. Matter of fact, I had Matthew 24 open. Let me move that over here. Let me see, where is that? 12. No, it's this is Matthew 24 and verse 30. And then shall the sign of the Son of Man appear. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven. And then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and in great glory. And the same thing going back to 2 Ezra 13. You know, that great mountain that was carved without hands coming out of, it says, I believe, out of the sea, but it's representing the atmosphere, the sky, the heavens. They're going to see Yahushua coming. All eyes are going to see him. And they're going to mourn. It says all the tribes of the earth shall mourn. Esau is in rulership right now. He's going to be mourning. All these heathens ruling under him, they're going to be mourning because their kingdom is getting ready to be taken away. And we're letting them know before it happens. We're letting them know who's going to do this. Yahweh, by his son Yahushai. Verse 31, and he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of the earth to the other. So they're going to gather the elect, the Lord's chosen, which are all Israelites. We're being gathered together right now. How do we know that Yahushua is coming? By the word, by the prophecies, by the men, the teachers that Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushua sent. This is how we know this day is coming. This is how we know this day is near. And this is how we know how we're going to be gathered. Wherever we are, we're going to be gathered into the chariot with Yahushua. Then we're going to be changed. Let me see. Where is it? Okay. This is Ezekiel 36 and 24. For I will take you from among the heathen and gather you out of all countries and will bring you into your own land. And I just, because the small hats, they say this already happened. And they don't even believe in the New Testament, but the Hatters, the Mad Hatters, believe this already happened. Why is that? Because they're in the land right now. They're in possession of all the ancient places are in our possession. It's being trodden down by them. You know, they went there by Balfour Declaration, by help of Babylon the Great, by help of these other nations. But here it is, Yahweh Ba'ashem Yahushai is telling us he's going to bring us back home. So, for I will take you from among the heathen and gather you out of all countries, and will bring you into your own land. Then will I sprinkle clean water upon you, and ye shall be clean from all your filthiness, and from all your idols will I cleanse you. A new heart also will I give you, and a new spirit will I put forth within you. And I will take away the stony heart out of your flesh, and I will give you an heart of flesh. So just saying, we're going to be changed. We're going to be cleaned up, changed. We're going to receive new bodies, the law, statutes, commandments put within us. And I will put my spirit within you and cause you to walk in my statutes, and you shall keep my judgments and do them. And ye shall dwell in the land that I gave to your fathers, and ye shall be my people, and I will be your power. So Yahweh B'Shem Yahushai, he's going to do all this for us, for his people, the Israelites. This ain't to other people. This ain't to other nations. I will also, this is for the Israelites that happen to be amongst these people and amongst these different nations. Israelites, I will also save you from all your uncleanliness, and I will call for the corn and will increase it, and will lay no famine upon you. But continuing on, it goes on. We're gonna remember these lies that we lived, these wicked lies that we lived. We're gonna have a day of atonement again. But the point being of this lesson, we've been scattered into all the nations around the world, and wherever we've been scattered to, Yahweh Shai is going to gather from these places. And Lord willing, this has been edifying. I'm going to give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rakach. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and peace and blessings to the 144,000 and the rest of the elect. Shalom.